So this is a video about the Karandavyuha Sutra, and parts of it I'm going to go through kind of fast because I want to keep this to under an hour. A lot of this is just a summary of the sutra, and so I don't want to make the summary longer than the sutra itself. Although it is, the sutra is a little convoluted in places, can be a little complicated. Although I think some people exaggerate that. Anyway, why? What's the point? So the Karandavyuha Sutra is the sutra in which the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra was first taught by Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay, so there's that. It also contains, interestingly, the mantra of Junjie Bosal, Om Jare Juri Junjie Sabaha. And if you're familiar with this mantra in the Korean tradition, we add Burim at the end. Om Jare Juri Junjie Sabaha Burim. There's a strong implication that there's some close connection between these two mantras and these two bodhisattvas, although that's not really spelled out. I just mentioned that because the main thing about the Karandavyuha Sutra is the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra. But when that is introduced, it's also introduced along with this other mantra. Here's an interesting quote. In the next slide, I'm going to talk about three important sources. If you're interested in learning about the Karandavyuha Sutra, this is one of them. A book called The Origins of Om Mani Padme Hum, a study of the Karandavyuha Sutra by Alexander Studholm. Here's a quote. In 1254, in what would appear to be the earliest such reference to the formula, that is the earliest one in any among Western sources, the Franciscan friar William of Rubruck remarked of the Mongolians of Karakoram, wherever that is, wherever they go, they have in their hands a string of 100 or 200 beads like our rosaries, and they always repeat these words, On Mani Bakam, which is, according to the source, God thou knowest, as one of them interpreted it to me. And they expect as many rewards from God as they remember God in saying this. Okay, so so here's a nice example of Om Mani Padme Hum written in Chinese characters and with the corresponding Mandarin pronunciation in Pinyin. And this down here is the name of the sutra. One of the Chinese names is the the 6-syllable Great Bright Mantra. 6-syllable Great Bright Mantra. And this says the Kuan Yin Mind or Heart Mantra. Or the Kuan Shin Ju would be the Sino-Korean pronunciation. Let's all right, pick up the pace here a little bit, make myself smaller, and try to make myself smaller. For some reason I always have trouble getting a hold of the. There we go. So this is three essential sources of the Karandavyuha Sutra. Of course, there's the translation from the Tibetan version. There, the original Sanskrit is no longer extant, if I remember that correctly. There is a Tibetan version which was translated from the Sanskrit, and there is a Chinese version which is translated from the Sanskrit. It appears quite likely that the Chinese version was translated from a different Sanskrit version than the Tibetan version. But this is a translation into English from the Tibetan version, and at the 84000.co website, where there's lots and lots of sutras that are freely available, and generally when they do a translation, they also provide a very helpful summary, an introduction, and a glossary, and footnotes, and all kinds of helpful resources. This is literally the book on the Karandavyuha Sutra, The Origins of Om Mani Padme Hum, a study of the Karandavyuha Sutra. And then here it's the Sanskrit is transliterated with the diacritics in English by Alexander Studholm, and you can download. So this is to download the translation. This is to download this book, and then in addition, Chunfang Yu's a wonderful book on Avalokiteshvara in the Chinese tradition, Kuan Yin, the Chinese transformation of Avalokiteshvara, which there's so many reasons to get this book, to read it and to study it. And here's another one. She has quite a lot to say about the Karandavyuha Sutra and the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra in the East Asian tradition rather than the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. A lot of the material that you'll find, people talking about the Karandavyuha Sutra, they will be talking about it with reference to the Tibetan tradition, although if you look at any of those sources closely, they'll tell you, and this is something that's discussed in the 84,000, there's in the introduction, I think, that the Tibetans don't really rely on the Karandavyuha Sutra. They have their own teachings and practices and texts that actually have little to do with the Karandavyuha Sutra. Nevertheless, the Tibetans do recognize that this is where this is the sutra in which the mantra is taught. Anyway, all right. And this is from the introduction to the translation at the 84,000.co website. The Karandavyuha is an early Mantrayana sutra that is the source of the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. The sutra is thus of particular importance as this mantra now holds a central place in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, especially throughout the lay population. This sutra also records Avalokiteshvara's transformation into the principal figure of the Buddhist pantheon, greater than all other Buddhas, let alone Bodhisattvas. And that's almost a direct quote from the sutra itself, greater than all Buddhas, let alone Bodhisattvas. So this is really 2 points about the sutra. One is that it has the mantra, the famous mantra in it, and second is that it has a lot to say about Avalokiteshvara. And this sutra and the mantra are not just important in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they're very important in the East Asian Buddhist traditions of China, Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. The Karandavyuha's principal content is the introduction of the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra and the descriptions of its inconceivable benefits. These are also the most quoted sections of the sutra. However, it contains no instructions on the qualities and benefits of each syllable. Of the kind that subsequently became widespread in Tibetan Buddhism, it also gives no explanation of the meaning of the mantra as a whole, a meaning that has been understood in various ways, to say the least. Alexander Studholm, in his The Origins of the Om Mani Padme Hum. So this is one. This is not from his book. This is from the 84,000.co website, but they're now referring to Studholm's book. He describes how the sutra was composed within the context of familiarity with and under the influences of Puranic literature, in particular the Skanda Purana. In this sutra, Avalokiteshvara has taken on various attributes and characteristics of Shiva, to the extent that one passage could be misread as describing Avalokiteshvara to be the creator of the universe. Even so, he is still being described as the creator of its deities, including Shiva and Vishnu. In particular, Avalokiteshvara's mantra is evidence of the influence of Shiva's 5-syllable mantra, Om Namah Shivaya. That's actually Om Namah Shivaya, 6 syllables. Don't know why they say 5 there. Which is found in the Skanda Purana, together with a description of the benefits of its recitation. Okay, and now we're going to just dive right into the synopsis. Okay, so the sutra starts with Buddha Shakyamuni at Jetavana, a monastery. There is a very long description of all those present. If you read it out loud, it takes about 15 minutes to get through that description. A brilliant light, which originates from Avicii hell, magically transforms Jadavana Monastery. Wish-fulfilling trees, stairways made of diamonds, and many other wonders appear out of nowhere. Bodhisattva Sarva Nivarana Vishkamden. Say it with me. Sarva Nivarana Vishkamben asked the Buddha to explain where this great light came from and who has this power. Now, I just want to say here, and there's a slide on Sarva Nivarana Vishkamben coming up. This is another reason for the importance of this sutra. Sarva Nivarana Vishkamben is one of the 8 great bodhisattvas. There is not, compared to many other bodhisattvas, especially others of the 8 great bodhisattvas, there are not a lot of sutra sources for Sarva Nivarana Vishkamben. The Buddha explains to Sarva Nivarana Vishkamben. You got to force yourself to say it until you can actually say it. That's what I found. The Buddha explains that Avalokiteshvara has entered Avicii hell and completely liberated all the beings there, and then started liberating all the hungry ghosts. A long discussion then ensues about Avalokiteshvara's exploits in Avicii hell and among the hungry ghosts. Then Shakyamuni tells the story about the lifetime when he was a merchant during the time of Buddha Vipassana. The merchant, Shakyamuni, heard the Buddha Vipassana describe the wondrous qualities of Avalokiteshvara. Then Shakyamuni tells the story from the time of the past Buddha Sikhin, when Shakyamuni was a bodhisattva named Dhanasura. At that time, the bodhisattva Sikhin, I don't know how to pronounce it, was teaching a great assembly, and a wondrous light appeared. The bodhisattva Ratnapani asked the Buddha, Sikhin, about the light. Sikhin Buddha explained that he had manifested the light as a sign that Avalokiteshvara was approaching. Then Avalokiteshvara arrives at the assembly of Sikhin Buddha. It transpires that Avalokiteshvara has liberated all the beings in all of the hell realms, and has also been liberating the hungry ghosts. Then Buddha Sikhin continues to describe the vast and inconceivable merits of Avalokiteshvara and the great benefits that will come to those who remember Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara's name. And this is another recurrent theme in this sutra. It's one of the sutras that emphasize the importance of the names of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. In this case, it's especially the name of Avalokiteshvara. And actually, when we finally do get to the Om Mani Padme Hum, it's made clear that is one of the names of Avalokiteshvara. And so from now on, I'm going to try to keep making reference to these are the numberings of the sections in the 84,000 website translation. And then Shakyamuni tells a story about the time of the past Buddha Vishvabhu, when Shakyamuni was a bodhisattva who bodhisattva who taught patience and lived in a cliff. Or he was a rishi, actually, who taught patience and lived in a cliff among the mountains where people did not go. This rishi, Shakyamuni, heard the Buddha Vishvabhu teach about Avalokiteshvara's travels through various lower realms, teaching them, the beings in the lower realms, teaching them the Karandavyuha Sutra. So just 2 minutes maybe on who is Sarva Nivarana Vishkamben. I'm glad you asked. He's one of the 8 great bodhisattvas. This is his Chinese name. The Sino-Korean pronunciation is Jegejang Bosal. Jegejang Bosal. This is how to spell that out phonetically in Hangul, in Korean. The literal meaning is J, it reads remove, get rid of, exclude, remove. Ge is to cover or conceal, and Jang means to block, separate, impede. Together, the last 2 characters combine to form in Chinese a Chinese Buddhist technical term that corresponds to the Sanskrit Buddhist technical term Sarva Nivarana. Sarva means all, Nivarana means hindrances. So all hindrances. And if you put it together with J, which means to remove, it means Sarva Nivarana Vishkambha is the bodhisattva who removes all hindrances. There is a sect in Korea that is especially focused on the Karandavyuha Sutra and this bodhisattva, and this is what they have to say, and there's a link to their website. Jegejang Bodhisattva is a bodhisattva who eliminates the afflictions and obstacles of living beings. How does he eliminate the afflictions and obstacles of living beings? It is said that he eliminates them through the great wisdom gate. In other words, the afflictions and obstacles of living beings can only be eliminated through wisdom. Another way of putting this is that these afflictions and obstacles are only caused by ignorance. Most Buddhas and bodhisattvas emphasize wisdom, and the teachings of saving living beings are compassion and wisdom. This is an automatically generated English translation, but it's actually fairly good, I think. I'm not sure if it's automatically. It seems a little too good to be that. It might be something that they actually put on the website, but it wasn't clear. The website is in Korean, but if you choose the Google automatic translation, it gives you this, and it seems a little better than what you would normally get. Jegejang Bodhisattva also places the path to saving living beings in the manifestation of wisdom. That's not clear. The acquisition of wisdom is the path to escaping from suffering and afflictions, the path to paradise, and the power to fulfill wishes and extinguish disasters. This is Jegejang Bodhisattva's function and the reason for his existence. All right, back to the synopsis. Then, 142, Avalokiteshvara went to teach the Asuras. Okay, so Avalokiteshvara is traveling around, went to teach the Asuras. The Asura king Bali begged Avalokiteshvara to look with compassion upon those who like to perform bad actions. In response to this, Avalokiteshvara explains at length how much merit is acquired by those who give alms to a Tathagata and Arhat, a Samyak Sambuddha. The Asura king Bali then tells a long, strange story that eventually leads to revealing who the dwarf is. It's Vishnu. So there's a dwarf in the story, Narayana, or Vishnu, and how the dwarf tricked him, Bali, and banished him and his retinue to the underworld. Having told this story, Bali now takes refuge in Avalokiteshvara. So, recall, this is Avalokiteshvara is traveling in the lower realms. He finds an Asura king down there, and he's been sent to the lower realms because he was tricked by a dwarf. Avalokiteshvara now tells Bali that in the future he will become a Buddha named Sri, who will guide the Asuras. Avalokiteshvara also states that in your Buddha realm there will not be the word desire, there will not be the word anger, there will not be the word ignorance, and you will come into possession of the 6-syllable Mahavidya. Now, the 6-syllable Mahavidya is simultaneously a reference to Om Mani Padme Hum, and it's also a reference to Avalokiteshvara. It's a kind of a egregious typo. It's the name of Avalokiteshvara. At the same time, it's also the name of a 4-armed goddess who personifies Om Mani Padme Hum. And this is the first time in the sutra that there's been a reference to the mantra. Buddha Vishvabu then tells about how Avalokiteshvara left the palace of the Asura king Bali and went to an extremely dreadful land inhabited by many demons. Avalokiteshvara tells these demons about the great benefits that come from learning even one 4-line verse from the Karandavyuha Sutra, as well as the benefits from writing out the sutra, or even just remembering the name of the sutra. Some of the demons become arhats, and some become once-returners. Now we're all the way up to 176. Then Avalokiteshvara took on the form of a Brahmin. So Avalokiteshvara is taking on different forms, depending upon where he's going and the people that he's trying to, the beings that he's trying to help. Avalokiteshvara now takes on the form of a Brahmin and goes to teach the Devas in the heavenly realms. One in particular. One of the Devas asks Avalokiteshvara, "Are you a Deva or a human?" To which Avalokiteshvara replied, I am not a deva, and I am not a human. I am one who has compassion for the poor and the wretched. I am one who shows them the path to enlightenment. I am a bodhisattva. That's a pretty good, straightforward description of a bodhisattva. Then Avalokiteshvara went to the island of Simhala, inhabited by demonesses, actually by Rakshasis in particular, where he appeared as a very handsome man. So now he's not appearing as one of them, he's appearing as a very handsome man, which the demonesses find very attractive. And the Rakshasis say to him, Sir, take us young women. We have no husband. For we who have no husband, be a husband. For we who have no protector, be a protector. For we who have no support, be a support. There was going to be a slide there, but I didn't get around to it. Now, continuing on with the story, to the Rakshasis, Avalokiteshvara promises to do what they ask, but only if they first do what he asks them. And what he asked, and then he doesn't really ask them. The Rakshasis agree, and then Avalokiteshvara teaches them the Dharma. So basically, he's asking them to just listen and receive the Dharma. As a result, all of them, so some of the Rakshasas become Arhats. All of the Rakshasas promise, we shall kill no more. From now on, we will not act like Rakshasas, and we will keep the Upasika vows. Rakshasas, they like to eat people, basically, is what they do. Which they will not do that anymore, these Rakshasas in particular. Then Avalokiteshvara transformed into a bee who buzzed Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Nama Samgaya. Other insects heard this buzzing and remembered these words, and as a result, they were all reborn in Sukhavati. Then, 184, Avalokiteshvara visited a land inhabited by cannibals. He caused a rain of divine food and water to fall, so that the cannibals no longer desired to eat each other's flesh. These were, and all the former cannibals then made offerings to Avalokiteshvara. Finally, Avalokiteshvara goes to visit Buddha Vishvabhu. After Avalokiteshvara's arrival, Buddha Vishvabhu teaches upon the 6 paramitas. And so there's a little bit more goes on, but then we get to the second half of the sutra. So we're halfway through. Not doing too bad. Then 2.1. Bodhisattva Sarva Nivarana Vishkambin, remember him? He asked Shakyamuni to talk about what samadhis Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara has previously remained in. Shakyamuni responds with a very long list of different samadhis. I think there's maybe 60 of them, if I remember that right. And the names are kind of strange. Some of the names are kind of funny. The samadhi named Divine Bright Earrings, the samadhi named Cuckoo Song, the samadhi named King of Lamps, the samadhi named Gaping Lion, and so forth. Then the Buddha states that in each of his pores, his skin pores, there are 100,000 samadhis, and furthermore, that Avalokiteshvara thus has an incalculable accumulation of merit. Even the Tathagatas do not have that kind of accumulation of merit, let alone a bodhisattva. Even the Tathagatas do not have that kind of accumulation of merit, let alone a bodhisattva. Elsewhere in the sutra, it is also stated that there are 100 Buddhas in every one of Avalokiteshvara's pores. Then the Buddha tells a story about when he was a merchant and a bodhisattva named Simhalaraja. He is the leader of a group of merchants who were traveling by sea. A group of demonesses, another group of, and these are also Rakshasis, they sent a storm that broke the ship into pieces. The merchants all ended up on the island of the demonesses, who appeared to the merchants as beautiful women. So just as Avalokiteshvara had appeared to the demonesses as a young, attractive man. Now the demonesses want to take all of these merchants. They've intentionally caused their ship to wreck, and then they go and they collect them and take them as their husbands. Each demoness chooses which one of the merchants she wants as her husband, with the leader of the demonesses obviously taking Shakyamuni Buddha, who's this Simha Laraja merchant, as her partner. Eventually, and I'm leaving a lot out here, the merchants are saved by a giant horse named Bahala, who takes all of the merchants onto his back. Bahala commands them all to not look back on any condition as he is taking them away from the island of the Rakshasis, demonesses. But as they are making their getaway, all the demonesses gather on the shore and begin weeping and wailing very loudly, and all of the merchants, except of course the future Shakyamuni, turn around and look, and as they do so, they fall off this giant horse. And they fall into the water. They're swept back up onto the shore of the island, and they are eaten by the demonesses. The giant horse Bahala, named Bahala, was none other than Avalokiteshvara. And then, after he's done telling the story, Shakyamuni states that it is impossible to calculate Avalokiteshvara's accumulation of merit, and this is a direct quote, but I can say just a little about his pores. Okay, so now I have in here, yes, he said pores. In fact, for much of the remainder of the sutra, there is quite a lot of attention paid to Avalokiteshvara's pores. The reason for this appears to be as a way of emphasizing just how inconceivable Avalokiteshvara's accumulation of merit is. While it is impossible to even try to discuss all of Avalokiteshvara's merit, it is just barely possible to discuss the merit found in 10 of Avalokiteshvara's pores. The average human body has 5 million pores. Even though there are only 10 pores that are discussed in the sutra, and at one point Shakyamuni even says there are no other pores. And that doesn't seem quite right to me personally. I think Avalokiteshvara probably has a lot more pores. And the point is that we can only conceive of the merit included in 5 of them, 10 of them. Anyway. Oh yeah. And this is I still need to work on this a little bit here. Maybe by the time I post this, or in a later revision, these are the names of the 10 pores. But I'm going to go back to the synopsis now, going through the sutra. Besides discussing these 10 pores, and I'll say a little bit more about them in a minute, but just want to set up how the rest of the narrative goes. Besides discussing 10 of Avalokiteshvara's pores, the second half of the sutra is where the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra finally gets introduced. That was mentioned briefly in the first half of the sutra. In fact, the mantra will be mentioned over and over again before, at long last, the 6 syllables are literally spelled out for us. In fact, the sutra spells out the mantra twice, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. All right, so now, first there is the pore named Suvarna, where 1,000,000,000 Gandharvas dwell. They do not experience the suffering of samsara and are satisfied by perfect happiness. This pore and the other 9 described in the sutra sound a lot like Pure Lands or Buddha realms, but they are not explicitly said to be that. Then there's the pore Krishna, that's the next pore, within which 1,000,000,000 rishis dwell. Both of these pores are introduced and described rather briefly. Then, 220, there is a brief exchange between Shakyamuni and Sarva Nivarana Vishkamban about the great benefits that come just because someone thinks of the name of the Karandavyuha Sutra, as well as to those who listen to, cause to be written out, possess, recite, study, and have their minds completely focused on the Karandavyuha Sutra, as well as even those who write even a single letter of the sutra. Then the next pore is introduced, Ratna Kundala, Many trillions of female Gandharvas live within Ratnakundala. Those female Gandharvas constantly recite the name of Avalokiteshvara, and as a result, all valuable things appear for them. At this point, Sarvanivarana Vishkaman has heard enough. He must see these pores for himself. But he is informed by Shakyamuni Buddha that those pores cannot be perceived, just as the elements of space cannot be perceived. Noble son, these pores cannot be perceived, and they cannot be touched. It starts getting kind of complicated and convoluted, and at times self-contradictory at this point, because of course the pores are being described. That's a little contradiction, saying they can never be seen, no one's ever seen them. Anyway, first Shakyamuni relates that even the great Bodhisattva, Samantabhadra, never saw the pores, even after searching for 12 years. Then Shakyamuni claims that even he has never seen the pores. But then Shakyamuni states, you will see him, Avalokiteshvara, if he comes here to the Saha universe to look at me, bow down to me, and honor me. Oh. So what does it mean to say they can't be seen, and yet if you wait, maybe he'll come? And this reminded me of something I saw recently in one of Won Hyo's writing, great Korean teacher, not a Zen master, someone who is greatly revered and cherished in the Korean Buddhist tradition, including among all good Korean Zen Buddhists, but lived and taught in Korea at a time either before Zen had been, Zen may have already been introduced in Korea when Won Hyo was there, or I'm not sure about the exact, but even if it had, he apparently was either unaware of it or had no interest in it. But this is what Won Hyo said: since there is no path to be traversed, there is no way in which to cultivate one's mind. Since there is no path, I'm going to repeat that, since there is no path to be traversed, there is no way in which to cultivate one's mind. Since there is nothing to be used as a gate, one cannot walk through it. That's like saying, oh, you can't see these pores. You can't see Avalokiteshvara. You can't even see, his pores. Even I haven't seen them, Shakyamuni Buddha says. Even Samantabhadra, after 12 years of searching, was yet. Even though the ocean itself has no ford, people can cross it with a boat and an oar. Also, even though the sky does not have a ladder, birds spread their wings and fly high above. By this we know that pathless path means that anything can be a path, and gateless gate indicates that anything can be a gate. Since there is nothing that is not a gate, each and every phenomenon can be a gate to lead to the mystery. Since there is nothing that is not a path, each and every place becomes the road leading back to the origin. And I'm going to go back to the synopsis of the sutra. 228. Shakyamuni describes the next pore, the fourth one, Amrita Bindu, in which 1,000,000 trillion devas live. These devas are all advanced bodhisattvas, some even at the 10th bhumi. Then, 230, we get to the fifth pore, named Vajramukha. Within it live many hundreds of thousands of kinnaras. If you're not familiar with the 8 kinds of celestial beings, kinnaras are one of them. A lot of the yakshas, kinnaras, kandobas, anyway, nagas, of course. But kinnaras are another one of the 8 kind of celestial beings. Now, only for the second time in the sutra, the 6-syllable Vijja mantra is mentioned. From now on, Sarvanivarana Vishkamban is no longer focused on seeing Avalokiteshvara or on seeing the pores. His focus is on learning this mantra. But just as was the case with seeing the pores, Shakyamuni tells Sarvanivarana Vishkamban, even the Tathagatas do not know the 6-syllable Mahavijaya, let alone the Bodhisattvas. Nevertheless, Shakyamuni also says, if someone traveled through this realm of being, there would be found a few who know the six-syllable Mahavidya. Then, 242, Shakyamuni states how he went to the Tathagata Padmotama in search of the six-syllable Mahavidya. Padmotama proceeds to praise at great length the great merits of the six-syllable mantra, and also explains how he had also searched through the universe for it. He doesn't say what the mantra is. Padmotama then, 249, states that finally he arrived in front of Amitabha and pleads to be taught the six-syllable queen of Mahavidyas. Then Avalokitesvara tells Amitabha that Padmotama should be given the mantra. Oh yeah, so Padmotama is now describing his search for the mantra. So it does get a little complicated. Figure out who's talking and who's telling the story and who the story is about. Avalokitesvara tells Amitabha that Padmotama should be given the mantra, but she insists, I'm referring to Avalokitesvara as a she here, but Padmotama has to see the mandala first. And there's some explanation given of why it's so important to see the mandala first, but then Avalokitesvara then proceeds to describe the mandala in great detail, and it's implied that as the mandala is being described, it's also being revealed to Padmotama. And after this is done, Padmotama again requests to be given the mantra, which Avalokitesvara now does. And so now we finally have written out, literally spelled out in the sutra, Om Mani Padme Hum. Now, Shakyamuni Buddha is telling the story, but he's telling a story that was told to him by Padmotama, and he's telling the story to Shakyamuni is telling the story to Sarvanivarana Vishkamban. I think I've got that straight. So this is why, even though the story is being related to Sarvanivarana Vishkamban, the implication is that even though within the story the mantra is revealed to Padmotama, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's being given to Sarvanivarana Vishkamban. And now the sutra actually makes that a little clearer. When after the story has been told, down here now at the bottom, Sarvanivarana Vishkamba once again asked Shakyamuni, Bhagavat, how can I obtain the six-syllable Mahavidya of perfect yoga? Bhagavat, just like those who are not satisfied by just a taste of Amrita. Bhagavat, I am not satisfied by simply hearing about the six-syllable Mahavidya. Shakyamuni then tells Sarvanivarana Vishkamban that he must go to Varanasi and find a Dharma Banaka who possesses, recites, and is completely focused on the six-syllable Mahavidya. A Dharma Banaka, reciter of Dharma, I guess is what that literally means in Sanskrit, is a practitioner who specializes in memorizing, reciting, and explaining particular sutras, or in this case, one particular dharani. This particular Dharma Banaka is a former monk who broke his vows and now lives with a family. His conduct is poor, Shakyamuni relates, but he also insists that Sarvanivarana Vishkamban should have no doubts. So, Sarvanivarana Vishkamban finds the Dharma Banaka, bows deeply and makes extensive offerings, and states, 267, O you who are the treasurer of the Dharma, you are like an unfathomable ocean that is an accumulation of the treasure of Amrita. You are a repository within the human realm. The Devas, Nagas, Yakshas, Asuras, Garudas, Kinnaras, Maharagas. There's the eight kinds of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Who's left out? Anyway, Humans and non-humans gather to listen to the Dharma from you. Got the Kinnaras, got the Ganduras, Garudas, Maharagas. Oh, well, anyway. All right. There ensues a back and forth, during which Sarvanivarana Vishkama repeatedly asks for the mantra, to which the Dharma Banaka only responds by extolling the great virtues of the mantra, but without revealing the mantra itself. Finally, 275, a voice comes from the sky, saying, give him the 6-syllable Queen of Mahavidyas. And this is the voice of Avalokiteshvara. And so at that, the Dharma Banaka relents and gives the mantra to Sarvanivarana Vishkaman. And so for the second time, it is spelled out in the sutra, and this time it is being explicitly and directly given to Sarvanivarana Vishkaman, who then, there's a little that happens afterwards, but then soon after that, Sarvanivarana Vishkaman returns to Jetavana Grove, Jetavana Monastery, wherever Shakyamuni told him, you have to go to Varanasi, find this Dharma Banaka, get the mantra, which he's now done. So now he comes back to where the Buddha is, where he left from, and there is a vast gathering of Buddhas that appears suddenly. And they all recite Namasaptanam Samyak Sam Buddha Kochinam Tajata Om Chale Chuli Chunde Svaha. I started saying Sabaha, which is the way I say it. Svaha is more probably closer to what the correct Sanskrit would be. This means the homage by 7 times 10 million Samyak Sambuddhas is like this: Om Chale Chuli Chunde Svaha. Then Shakyamuni nonchalantly goes back to describing the next 5 pores. After describing the 10th pore, which I'm skipping over now, Devajaraja, Shakyamuni tells about the 4 great oceans that come from the big toe of Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Avalokiteshvara's right foot. So, in addition to being able to maybe conceive of the virtues of these 10 pores of Avalokiteshvara, it's also possible to have some conception of the 4 great oceans that come from one of Avalokiteshvara's big toes. Shakyamuni also states that there are no more pores at this point. Then Avalokiteshvara finally shows up, and the god Maheshwara and the goddess Umadevi receive from Avalokiteshvara prophecies of their future attainment of Buddhahood. Normally, such predictions of future enlightenment are only given by a Buddha, and in fact, that's often considered to be Buddhist doctrine, that a prophecy predicting one's future attainment of Anuttara Samyaksambodhi can only be given by a Buddha. This is emphasizing the fact that, at least in this sutra, Avalokiteshvara is being elevated to a status equal to, if not even above, that of a Buddha. And as if to draw our attention to this, Maheshwara, when he comes on the scene in the sutra, he first asks Shakyamuni Buddha for a prediction. And Shakyamuni Buddha responds by directing him to Avalokiteshvara. So it's kind of a little bit of interesting choreography there in the sutra at that point. Then 298, we're coming up to the end pretty soon. Sarvanivarana Vishkaman asks Shakyamuni to elaborate on the special qualities of Avalokiteshvara. And here's a typical example of what follows. Noble son, it is like this: if someone were to provide Tathagatas, Arhats, and Samyak Sambuddhas, as numerous as the grains of sand in 12 Ganges rivers, with robes, food, bowls, bedding, seats, necessary medicine, and utensils for an eon, the accumulation of merit that would come from serving those Tathagatas would only equal the merit of the tip of one hair on the body of Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara. Then, 2.102, Shakyamuni tells about his previous life when his name was Dhanasura. During the time of the Buddha Krakuchanda, during this time, Dhanasura, the future Shakyamuni, was witness to a kind of samadhi contest, samadhi vigraha, between Avalokiteshvara and Samantabhadra. At the end of the contest, Buddha Krakuchanda declares Avalokiteshvara to be the winner of the samadhi contest. It actually goes on quite a bit. Lots of different kinds of samadhis are being described. Anyway, soon after Shakyamuni tells this story, Avalokiteshvara leaves. And at the same time, the Devas, Nagas, Yakshas, Asuras, Gandharvas, Garudas, Kinnaras, Maharagas, humans and non-humans all departed. But Nananda is still there, and he asks Shakyamuni to teach us the vows of training. And Shakyamuni responds with a longish lecture on the proper conduct for monastics, and including the dire consequences in future lives for transgressors of these rules for conduct. After this, Ananda leaves, and the sutra ends. Okay, so that is the end. Okay, good. What else do we have here? Oh, yeah. If you're familiar with the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, so one thing that I haven't mentioned, I did mention that there was a sect in Korean Buddhism that is specifically focused on the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra and on Sarva Nivarana Vishkambin Bodhisattva and the Karandavyuha Sutra. But the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra is known and practiced by essentially all Korean Buddhists in particular, because it is part of what is one of the most popular and widespread practices of Korean Buddhists, including especially of lay Korean Buddhists, and that is the chanting of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra. In the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, in addition to Om Mani Padme Hum, and just as it does in the Karandavyuha Sutra, right after the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, in the 10,000 Hands and Eyes Sutra, comes the Namu Saranam Samyak Samuta Guchinam Danyata Om Jare Jure Junji Sabaha Buddhim. And you can compare these two. They're not exactly the same. It's not just the addition of Buddhim at the end. But I'm not going to go into that. Only to say that this, just to further emphasize that that this sutra and the mantra are highly relevant to all practitioners of any kind of Buddhism that comes from East Asia. Oh yeah, this is just some other notes. I think I'll just end it on this. This is not meant to. I do not have any particular insight into the deep, profound meaning of this sutra. I have an inkling of understanding of the deep, profound meaning of this sutra, and definitely some appreciation for the importance of the sutra, and feel that it's something I want to get to know better. One of the best ways of doing that is by reading it, studying it, and chanting the great, bright, six-syllable queen of mantras, Om Mani Padme Hum. And so with that, I'll end it. I hope this is helpful to people. And I just do again want to emphasize that I'm not passing along any enlightened insights that I have in this sutra, only encouraging others to look into it with me. That's what I want. And may all beings benefit. Thank you for listening.